Okay guys, today we are going to make this yogurt menu. This would appear inside a yogurt shop that they could have at the front for customers to pick up. It's got the nutritional information on the back, and so we're going to use tables. So let's get started. We want to make a new file. We want to make this 6 wide by 13 high. And remember that if you don't have this on inches, it's on picas, you can easily change it like that. We want this to be 2 pages because it's going to print front and back. We don't want this to have facing pages. Remember, that's when you have the cover of a brochure and then a spread, so that would be awkward for this. We don't need a primary text frame. The only other thing that we can do here is give ourselves some margins so that we have kind of a container of space to keep things in. And then also, as usual, anything that prints, it's going to need bleed on it of at least 0.125. So let's create that. The first thing we want to do is we want to place the logo. And I'm just going to drag it on the margin, about like that. And of course I want it to be centered. So in properties, I can see that anytime you select something like this, you have the option of the align panel. So I'm just going to click on center, make sure that's centered on the page. And then the other thing I can do with this logo is I can create my color scheme by using the color theme tool. So I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to go underneath the eyedropper, grab the color theme tool, and just click inside that box. And it gives me this color scheme based on the logo, which is going to be really helpful. And when I click on this, it will add this color swatch to my swatches. And if we go to swatches, we'll see it right there, colorful theme. The next thing I want to do is I want to put a border around this entire page, but I need the border to go out to the bleed and then come inside. So the best way to do that is to use the rectangle frame tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the box for this right on the bleed line, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom to the bleed down there too. And I'll be able to see this better. Now I'm going to put a stroke on this that's the darker teal, and I'm going to make this 25 point. Now you can see what happens is if I go to preview, the border is drawing centered on that bleed line, so now hardly any of it is left there in the page. So that's easy to fix. I'm just going to click on stroke, and I have the option to align this stroke all the way to the center. So it goes from the outside in. And that's why it's really important to put this right on the bleed line, so you can go up close and make sure that you've got it right on. Just snap it right to there. Now when I go to preview, you can see that it has a nice border all the way around. So let's lock that just because we won't need to change it and it's just going to get in the way. So I'm going to go to Object, Lock. And now it's time to start putting in our copy. So I'm going to grab the copy and place it off to the side just like we do with everything else. Yogurt menu copy. And I'm just going to pull from this. So I know that the text that is the intro paragraph and the choose your toppings goes at the top. So I'm just going to grab all of that. Command X. Remember, as you use copy, you want to make sure you delete it so that you know what's there and what's gone. So here's my text. So I need to style this now. I need to set the styles for this piece. So this type up here is actually going to be larger text. So I want to make this Gill Sans. I'm going to make all the copy Gill Sans. And you can use a similar sans serif. It doesn't have to be Gill Sans. And I'm going to make this semi-bold. And I'm going to make this a lot bigger. And the reason is this is their promise. This is kind of their mission statement. So we want to make this larger than the regular text. And I'm going to make a style sheet for that by hitting the plus. And I'm going to call this large text. And then I'm going to open that text box up to reveal the rest of the copy. Now this, I don't necessarily want it to be as large. I'm going to choose the subhead, which I want it to also be Gill Sans. And this one I can go bold. I'm not going to make it very large, but I think I can pull up bold. You can always go back and change it in the style sheet. So I want this to be 17 also, just like the type above it, except for this is subhead. And I'm going to make the leading a little bit more. So I'm going to go 17/20 for this. And then I want to put some space above and below, You see, I want some space before that big chunk of copy, and I want space after this where the regular copy starts. So I'm going to go to Properties panel, I'm going to go down to Paragraph, and I'm just going to click one click of space. Now we want to make this into our style sheet. So I'm going to hit plus, and we're going to call this Subhead. So now we just need to style this text, and this text I want to be Gill Sans also. Gill Sans is such a good typeface with lots of different weights, so it's ideal for something like this, where I can just use all different weights. And I'm going to make this 12/16, and I'm going to make another style sheet and call it text. So now I've got all my copy here, and what I need is my table that has the prices for the toppings. So what I go to is Create Table under Table. And what I want for this is 4 rows. Remember, rows go down, and 4 columns, and columns go across. My table that I just created is loaded in the cursor, and I'm just going to drag it from margin to margin. That doesn't look very pretty, so there's a lot of styling that we're going to have to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the stroke on this table. So I'm going to highlight the table, and I do that with the text tool because a table is essentially text. It's not an object. So I'm going to put my cursor in the first square, highlight the whole thing. Now I've got my Essentials Classic, as you can see. So my controls will be up here in the control bar. And if you see this table, this is kind of tricky doing strokes on a table. Right now, do you see how the outer part of the table is in blue? That means that whatever I do to this stroke will only affect the outer border. But if I click on the inner lines, so they're blue, now all of them are selected, I can go in here and I can change the stroke to white. Now you won't really see any stroke now if I go to preview, right? Because I haven't filled anything in yet. So let's do that next. So this top bar, I want this to be the orange, the darker orange. And then I want the left side, so I'll just select these left rows. I want that to be the darker teal. And then I want the one on the right to be the lighter teal. Now to put the text in here, all I have to do is highlight this copy, yogurt, small, medium, and large. So I'm going to hit Command X to get rid of that. Highlight the top bar, which is essentially 4 text boxes, and each of these pieces of text are separated by a tab. So when you hit Command V or paste, it will paste them going across. Now for the text that goes up and down, we have the toppings. So highlight 1 topping, 2 toppings, 3 toppings. Command X. Highlight the first column and hit Command V. Then grab the first chunk of prices, Command X to get rid of it, Command V, and do it for the last 2 columns also. So now I have the text in here and I just have to style it. So for this header, I can just use one word to style it and make a style sheet. I also want this to be Gill Sans. Let's make this bold so it stands out from the rest of the text. And we'll make it all caps and centered. And then I'll make that a style sheet, and we'll call that Table Header. And say OK. And then we also want that text to be white. So let me add that in there and then redefine. If you highlight the entire cell, you'll also get the option to align this type to the center. So this is our style sheet. I'll just go through and make small, medium, and large into that style sheet. And then with all of that selected, I will center it in the space. The centering it in the space is not part of the style sheet. You have to put that in separate. So now for this copy, I can make this into the text, only I want it a little bit different, so I'm going to make a new style sheet. And I'm going to call this Table Copy. I want this centered, and I want it centered in the cell also. And I can even make it just a little bit bigger than the regular copy since it's just kind of sitting there with lots of space. So I'm going to make this 13 point regular, and I'm going to redefine that copy. There we go. Remember that when you are selecting the cell, that's when you can make changes to the spacing and to the color. But when you're selecting the type itself within the cell, that's when you can make changes to that. So because I have a text style now, I can select these as cells, but it's still going to use the style sheet that I have in there, table copy. And I'm going to click here to override any styles that are sitting there, and then I'm going to center it like that. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Probably what I would do is this top bar with the sizes doesn't have to be quite as big. There are a lot of ways you can resize these, but the easiest one is just to hover right on the edge of that bar and just bring it up a little smaller. And if you want all of these cells to be smaller, you could do the same thing, just hold the shift key first, and it will reduce all of them proportionately. So we could just make that a little bit smaller like that. So that is our table that gives the information about the prices. Now we have to put the copy about toppings. So I'm just going to grab this over here that says toppings, a little half paragraph of space. Make a type box that sits on the margin, paste that in there, and then this will be easy. We have our subhead, and then we have our text. And then I can move these into place, make that text box smaller, and then the only other thing left to do for this side is just to place the photo. And I'm going to, it's loaded into my cursor, so I'm just going to drag it from margin to margin. Now if I want this to be a little bigger, you can see that the white part of it at the bottom is kind of going over the border. So what I would do is I'd make this big enough. Remember to hold the shift key, and if you want to size everything all at once, you hold shift command and grab the corner. That sizes the image and everything else. And now I'm going to set this to the back. So you can use the shortcut shift command and the left bracket, and what that does is it sets it behind the border. Now I'll just move that up so that that bottom container is clear, and then that looks good. Now I'll check my images. This image has 233 pixels per inch, the effective pixels per inch at that size, which is good enough. And then my logo has 379. Now I'll go to preview, just make everything lined up. Maybe I want to move this chart a little closer to that copy. Okay, that's it for the front. Now we just need to style the back.